Hi everyone, Rick Cain here. I'm the head keeper for the St. Augustine Lighthouse and Maritime Museum, and we've been taking some questions and trying to answer folks' questions online. So Sergio wrote in this past week, and he asked about how lighthouses along the coast work and funding. And to answer the funding question, we need to go back to 1789, and that's when the first Congress passed what we call the U.S. Lighthouse Bill. It appropriated funds to build lighthouses. It took 12 existing lighthouses and brought them under federal control, including the Boston Harbor Light on Little Brewster Island. And then they started building more lighthouses up and down the coast. All commerce happened on the water. Things were brought in by ships, and we had to protect shipping because we were building a new country. So that's why lighthouses were needed, because they provide a reference point on the coast to make sure people don't get lost. Coastal lights need to shine far out to sea, and so to do that, the light source needs to be about 160 to 200 feet above sea level. And from New Jersey all the way down the east coast of the United States, the land is very low and flat, and so they had to build a bunch of big tall towers to get the light up to the height it needed to go. And after a while, they all started kind of looking the same. And so the Lighthouse Service decided to give them a fancy paint job, and that is called the day mark. Now, technically, the day mark is just a physical description of the station from the sea, but the fancy paint jobs are fun, and ours is a black and white barber pole with a red lantern. No other lighthouse on the east coast of the United States has that mark. So you know, if you're sitting offshore on a boat, way offshore where you know it's safe, it's in deep water, you're not going to run into everything, and you take your spyglass or your binoculars, depending on what era you lived in, and you look back at the coast, you see that black and white barber pole with the red lantern, you know that's St. Augustine, Florida, and you know exactly where you are along the coast. So day marks are different. The next lighthouse to the south of us is Ponce Inlet at Daytona. It's a red brick tower. The next lighthouse south of that is Cape Canaveral. It has a black and white horizontally striped tower. So they're all a little bit different, and that makes it easier, and that's called the day mark. Now at night, you also have to be able to tell them apart, and so every lighthouse has a different flash pattern, and that's called the night mark. Our night mark is a 30-second fixed flash. It flashes every 30 seconds, and it's visible all the time. Other lighthouses might flash and then go black, and but ours stays on all the time. And so Daytona's, I believe, is a 10-second flash. So on a really clear night, if you're sitting 30 miles offshore to the southeast, you might be able to see Daytona flashing every 10 seconds and us flashing every 30 seconds, and you can triangulate your position off the coast without any modern technology whatsoever. And so that's how they work. And a lot of people say, well, we don't need these anymore. We got GPS. Well, that's not really true, because we use our eyes more than anything. And ship's captains like to see lights on the coast that tell them where they are, that confirms what their instruments are telling them. It's a lot more comfortable. It's kind of like an airline pilot needs runway lights at the airport. They can land their plane with their instruments, but they're a whole lot more comfortable looking out the window and seeing those lights. So ship's captains are the same way. And all these lights, with the exception of the privately owned ones now, are maintained by the U.S. Coast Guard Aids to Navigation team. And these ladies and gentlemen work really hard going out and maintaining all the lights, all the buoys, all the channel markers and things like that for ships to get in and out of port safely. So that's pretty much how they work. You should know that funding changed for us in 2002. In 2000, the Congress passed the National Historic Lighthouse Preservation Act, and what it did was it gave the Coast Guard permission to give lighthouses away or sell them. So you can go to the National Park Service website and actually see a list of lighthouses for sale, but you must maintain the structure. You cannot knock it down and put your dream cabin out on that stony point. So we took ownership of our lighthouse in 2002, the first in the southeast United States to do so. And so we have been privately owned and privately funded ever since then. A lot of people think, well, aren't you federal or part of the National Park Service? No, we're not. Privately owned, privately funded, and we rely on support from donors, from our members, and from the visiting public to stay operational. And we love our lighthouse. As a matter of fact, you can go to #LoveYourLighthouse and read all about us. And help support us there as well, which is pretty important. One last question he had was, is there a good book out there on lighthouses? I have not seen a comprehensive book that's good. There's a lot of resources on the web, including our website, www.staugustinelighthouse.org, or just search for the St. Augustine Lighthouse. There's also the U.S. Lighthouse Society that has a nice database on Fresnel lenses, which is the big thing that creates the light at the top of the tower, made in Paris in the 1800s. 9.5 feet tall, 6 feet across, 370 prisms to magnify and focus the light offshore. It's a beautiful lens, and it's an original lens, and many of them have been taken out of lighthouses, so we're fortunate to have our original lens. So an original Victorian era lighthouse with our original lens still standing our duty in the nation's oldest port city. It is a national treasure, and we continue to be the nation's front porch light. So support us, help us out, send in your questions, and I'll be here to answer them next time. See you then. Bye.